Hello, boys and girls. Greg from the Scary Spirits Podcast here to make you another cocktail. This week's cocktail is the Terror-Tini, and it is the featured cocktail in today's episode. I'm going to start with our shaker with ice. To that, we're going to add vodka, 1 1/2 ounces. Next, lemon juice from the plastic lemon. 1 ounce. 1 ounce lemon juice, freshly squeezed from the plastic lemon. Shit. And then 3/4 ounce simple syrup. 3/4. And we shake. Take our chilled martini glass. And we strain our cocktail. Next, pomegranate juice. 1/2 ounce. And we slowly pour it over the back of a spoon. Not bad. Finally, a maraschino cherry. And there you have it, boys and girls. The Terror-Tini. Layers kind of nicely. Yeah, not bad. Better than I thought it'd be. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy the podcast. See ya.
If you know me, it's no secret that I like vampires. Bela Lugosi, Anne Rice, and don't even get me started on the Lost Boys. But this week's episode of the Scary Spirits Podcast, Nosferatu, has made me reassess. Well, just a little. The vampires that I'm enamored with are the romantic, brooding, dare I say, sexy type. You know, dreamy. Nosferatu, however, is less like a vampire of your dreams and much more like a vampire of your nightmares. Sleep well. Cheers.
Welcome to the Scary Spirits Podcast. Please be advised that the presenters may use adult language and/or discuss adult situations. This podcast is not intended for younger listeners or those that may be easily offended. So, if you're ready, let's go.
Hi, I'm Greg,
Hey, I'm Karen.
and welcome to the Scary Spirits Podcast, the podcast that combines the two very different yet highly compatible worlds of scary films and alcoholic spirits.
What could possibly go wrong?
Indeed. How are you, Karen?
I'm excellent. How are you, Greg?
Awesome.
You are awesome. Listen to that voice change. Just because Greg's wearing new glasses and he's all peppy.
They're not new
Oh.
glasses, they're just different glasses.
Well, they're not your Scary Spirits podcast regular glasses.
They are not.
He's looking extra intelligent today. So get ready, everyone.
Oh, I got lots for this movie.
We're going to be expecting a lot from you. If you're
Oh,
going to
yeah.
look the part, even though
We're-
they can't see it.
No, we're deep diving into this film, Karen.
Good.
Speaking of which, I believe this was your choice, wasn't it, Karen?
It was.
And what have you chosen for us this week?
I have chosen the film Nosferatu from 1922.
1922, you say. Any reason you chose this film, Karen?
Well, vampires are cool. And I think it's just a film that we should see.
You have not seen this film before, Karen?
I have not. I realized I've seen short clips of it, but not the whole thing.
Me as well. Very short clips.
But I think as horror movie podcasters, this one should be in our repertoire.
Probably should.
So that's the only reason I chose it.
Might you have a cocktail for this episode, Karen?
I do.
Go on.
It's called the Tito's Terror-Tini. It's made with Tito's vodka, but we'll let you use any vodka you'd like.
I used Grey Goose since we're naming brands.
I used Kettle One.
Mm.
You're going to need 1.5 ounces of vodka, 1 ounce of lemon juice, 3/4 ounce simple syrup, 1/2 ounce of pomegranate juice, and 1 maraschino cherry.
And once we have our ingredients, Karen, how would we make this cocktail?
Are your maraschino cherries still from the 80s? Or have you gotten a new jar yet?
They're from the 2010s.
You're going to add the vodka, lemon juice, and simple syrup to a shaker with ice. Shake and strain into a chilled martini glass. Sink the pomegranate juice by pouring slowly over the back of a spoon into the cocktail, where I made an incredible mess. It was embarrassing. Drop in 1 maraschino cherry. I like this drink. I put a little too much lemon juice because I just squeezed a lemon in, so it makes me pucker a little bit, but I'm digging it.
Well, of course, I used the plastic lemon and measured it very exactly. And I was afraid there would be too much, but it's not. I think it's just about right. Maybe just a little, just a hair too much, but pretty much just about right.
Yeah, I really like it.
Right. It's better than I thought it would be. I'll say that.
I think it's also an excellent Halloween drink. It's got layers. It's got a little red in the bottom.
Yeah.
And just as a tiny aside, the man who stars in this movie, Max Schreck. Schreck in German does mean terror or fright. I don't think it means terror exactly, so it ties in the drink even more. So I'm extra good today.
Great, Karen. I took 2 years of German in high school, and I did not know that.
Well, I saw that somewhere. I didn't pull
You just
that one
saw it
out.
somewhere. You just saw it on the street somewhere. You believe everything you read on the streets, Karen?
Well, if it's on the internet, it must be true.
That is true. I cannot argue with you there, Karen.
Well, if I'm wrong, all you German speakers out there, let me know. I don't think it translates right to terror because I did investigate a little bit, but not much. But it does mean fright or something like scary or something like that. So
Sprechen Sie Deutsch?
9. I can say I'm hungry.
Okay. Well, that's something.
And, everybody knows I love you, right?
Yes. It's in this film, at least in the version I watched.
It is.
Okay. Should we give our listeners time to make their own cocktail, Karen?
Absolutely. Go make your Terror-Tini.
Hold on. And we're back.
Yes, we are.
All right, Karen, might you have a brief synopsis
I
of
do.
this 1922 silent film?
It is a silent film.
Go on, tell me a story.
In this highly influential silent horror film, the mysterious Count Orlok summons Thomas Hutter to his remote Transylvania castle in the mountains. The eerie Orlok seeks to buy a house near Hutter and his wife Ellen. After Orlok reveals his vampire nature, Hutter struggles to escape the castle, knowing that Ellen is in grave danger. Meanwhile, Orlok's servant, Knock, prepares for his master to arrive at his new home. Which is great.
Thank you, Karen.
Except,
Karen, where did you watch this film?
I watched it on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
Did you?
I did not, Karen. I watched it on the Horror Classics 50 movie DVD collection.
Well, that's good, because I'd like to see what the differences are.
And from what I can deduce, the version on the DVD is from 1947, and it includes names on the title cards, which I guess is what they call the
Credits?
The text in between scenes where they tell you what's going on.
Yeah.
That includes names from Bram Stoker's original novel.
So does the one I watched on Amazon.
And how long was the one on Amazon?
Hour and 20 minutes.
Yes, so that was the same as the one mine was. Hour 19.
It might have been, yeah, something close to that. Yeah.
And that is the same one, I believe, which is available to watch for free on Wikipedia. There's a link to watch.
So I paid $1.99 for nothing. Well,
we had to know, Karen. We had to know.
Yes, we did, because that's how we are, curious.
And apparently the original release in the United States, anyway, was 70 minutes, which we will talk about much later.
Okay.
So I don't know what's added and whatever.
I can guess what some of the added film things are. Well, we don't have them, but I can see where in what I watched, you could add some things that added.
Before we go through the film, should we talk about characters and the characters of the original film compared to the names of the characters in the version we watched?
We can. I think most people know the characters as we watched them. The reason they were changed is because this is a blatant ripoff of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So in order to avoid copyright infringement and all of that, they just changed the names.
In the original film.
Yes, which I give them credit for making them much different.
Are they? Are you being sarcastic, Karen?
No, Ellen is not close to Nina.
That's true.
Well, Orlok is not close to Dracula.
No, but it's Count Orlok. So
True.
It's Count Orlok
is Dracula.
Original character, and in this version he's Dracula. Thomas Hutter is Jonathan Harker.
Mm-hmm.
Ellen Hutter is Nina, or I believe in the original novel it was Mina.
Mm-hmm.
Knock is Renfield, right? Well,
yes.
That's a huge difference. Ruth, I think, is Lucy.
She's not in my
original film. They call her Ruth, but in this they call her Lucy, I'm pretty sure. And Professor Bulwer might be Van Helsing. I wasn't sure.
It is, yeah.
So, and there are other doctors and other characters, but they're not important.
Those are the big ones.
Right. So for our purposes, going through the film, I'm going to call them as they were in the film we watched.
So yes, from the novel.
So the 1947 version.
Although, as you stated, Nina is Mina in the novel, but we're going with Nina.
We're going with Nina. All right. Anything else, or are you ready to get into it?
I think that's it.
All right. Nosferatu, 1922. Film starts, we have credits.
Well, on Amazon, it was 13 plus.
Okay.
And there was violence, frightening scenes, alcohol, smoking, and sexual content. Which I don't remember a lot of those things, but okay.
I remember pretty much all of them.
Okay.
Very sexual film, Karen.
It is. That one's not the one I'm not talking about sexual content. I'm talking about alcohol and smoking.
Well, I remember them drinking and smoking.
Okay.
So Of course, we have lots of words to read in this film.
Yes,
and I'm
we
not going
do.
to read them all aloud to you people, but I will
Maybe
read the beginning.
maybe I will.
So the film starts after the credits, and we see from the diary of Johann Cavalier, historian of his native city of Bremen, which apparently is in Germany.
It is. It's a city straddling the Wasser River or Weser River in northwest Germany.
Nosferatu, the name alone can chill the blood. Nosferatu, was it he who brought the plague to Bremen in 1838? I have long sought the causes of that terrible epidemic and found at its origin and its climax the innocent figures of Jonathan Harker and his young wife, Nina.
That's the first card.
Have you read the original novel, Karen?
No.
Dracula by Bram Stoker.
I've started it more than once, but it's more difficult than you would think.
Well, is it basically letters and diary entries, stuff strewn together?
I think it's
like
mostly
this?
his diary, if I remember correctly,
Okay.
but
That's kind of what I read upon my research.
Jonathan's diary.
Okay. But the film begins and we see a man apparently bringing flowers to his, I wrote girlfriend, but it is his wife, Nina.
I'm guessing they're newlyweds from the
Why?
way they act.
Why? Because he's bringing her flowers.
Yes, for no reason, which total hint. Anyone out there, just bring your partner flowers for no reason. Big rewards for that. Big.
Next, we see the man who is Harker in our movie. And he goes to the office, I guess, where he works. And his boss is Renfield, apparently, who is a real estate agent. And he has received a letter from Count Dracula in Transylvania, and he wants to buy some land in Bremen. Don't know why he wanted to move to Bremen, but whatever.
But the letter looks like it's in code.
It looks occult. It's all in occult.
Yes, it's symbols.
Drawings, yes.
Before you go any further, we should say that music does accompany the whole film, pretty much.
But I don't think it's important.
No, but it's not like you're watching something with no sound. There is some, at least in mine, there's
music, but it's not.
Yeah, but it speeds up when they're happy and slows down.
It's just coincidence, I think. It's not really planned.
All right. Mine seemed to be sort of.
I'm thinking you watched the same version I did.
Okay. I thought it brightened up when they were happy.
As you would, Karen.
I'm an optimist, Greg. I love love.
Renfield sends Jonathan Harker to meet the Count. He's going to send him to Transylvania.
Renfield has the hairiest eyebrows I think I've ever seen.
And Renfield says that the house across the street from where Harker lives should be perfect for the Count.
It looks like an abandoned warehouse, doesn't it?
It is. I think it is.
But he's like, leave at once, my young friend, and don't be frightened if people speak of Transylvania as the land of phantoms. I think that's a red flag.
So then Jonathan Harker goes to tell his wife Nina that he will be going away for a few months. And she seems very worried.
In this silent film, we should say they're over demonstrative, because when Renfield says you're going to go and Jonathan agrees, they laugh and laugh, like to show, yes, we're very happy about this. And when he comes home and he tells Nina, you can tell she's very upset by it. It's not distracting or anything, but it's just, there are some times when they're laughing, it just makes me giggle because it's so over the top.
Well, that's what they did. Silent
yes.
film,
no, I
right?
agree. I agree.
So he leaves Nina with his good friends, with Sterna or something like that, and Lucy.
He's going to the Carpathian Mountains. Do you know where those are?
Transylvania, Karen?
Well, it's a range of mountains forming an arc across Central Europe. 1,500 kilometers long, third longest European mountain range. It stretches from the Eastern Czech Republic all the way to Serbia. So Romania, yes, is in there, which is where Transylvania is.
Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome, Greg. But he's leaving right then.
Yeah,
Like,
he gone.
He packs a bag and that's it.
He does.
Drops his wife off at his friend's house, and they do kiss a lot. They can't leave without kissy, kissy, kissy.
Whatever. But before we know it, Harker has arrived in Transylvania and is at a pub. Because you always stop at the pub.
Well, yeah.
Wherever you go. It's first place.
And boarding house.
Yeah, to read the townspeople and, the
Or
customs.
offend them, which is what usually happens in these movies that we watch.
So he tells the people in the pub that he is there and he's headed to see the Count in his castle, Count Dracula's castle. And they all get very concerned.
Yeah, that stops the whole pub in their tracks.
And they warn him not to leave because it is too dark and evil spirits lurk in the dark. And he's very happy and they all laugh and they give him a room for the night.
But he laughs it off. He doesn't think it's real, but he stays anyway.
Goes to his room and there is a book by his bed called The Book of Vampires.
Oh, is that where he got it? I thought he brought it with him, and I thought that was strange.
It was in his room.
That makes sense.
At least in the version I watched.
Yeah. I think he picked it up off the table.
He begins reading, Karen, and we have words to read.
But did you see something outside?
You talking about the jackal?
Is that what it is? A jackal?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a hyena.
Well, in other text I read afterwards, like an essay about the film, it's a jackal, which...
Okay, makes sense.
I didn't know until after the fact, and I thought, well, that's interesting because Damien was born of a jackal.
Yes, so they're connecting things, but I didn't know that's what a jackal looked like. It looked like
I thought it was a hyena when I first saw it too.
Or a painted dog, even an African painted dog or something. But anyway, it's outside and the horses all take off.
They get spooked. But he opens the book about vampires and begins reading. And it says, and it was in 1443 that the first Nosferatu was born. The name rings like the cry of a bird of prey. Never speak it aloud. Harker tosses it aside and goes to sleep. Next day, Harker takes a coach to the castle. And they're trying to arrive before the sun sets. Well, I don't know how far he is away from the castle, but
must have been a while.
Shouldn't take all freaking day. But anyway.
Well, because it does take all day. But if he had left, well, I guess they can't travel in the night because they're afraid, but he would have arrived at the castle in the daytime if he had left when he originally got to the pub.
Probably.
But nobody wants to be out at night.
The man driving the coach forces Harker to get out and walk to the castle, much like all the other horror films we watch, Karen. They never take you to the door, Karen. They let you off like a mile away.
And they throw your bags on the ground.
All right. They will go no farther because it is the land of phantoms.
Not for a fortune.
No, they didn't throw his bags out, though.
No, they didn't.
He only had like one little duffel bag anyway. I don't know.
He's not phased. He's going to walk.
He does. But then a coach arrives and picks him up. And I wrote, it appears to be like a funeral coach, Karen.
It does.
The coach's driver directs Harker to the castle once they arrive, and the coach drives away very quickly.
It's moving very quickly. He looks a little concerned.
And did you think that was the Count driving or the Count's
I think it was
servant?
The Count.
I did too. I read
because later
he's that it's the Count's servant, but
because he says all his servants are gone.
Count to me. Yeah,
it did.
So Harker approaches the castle, and the door opens as he approaches. Enters, and it shuts behind him
without anyone doing it.
He meets the Count, and apparently the Count has dinner ready for him, and they eat. And Harker slices some bread, and then the clock strikes midnight, and he is startled, and he accidentally cuts his thumb. The Count gets very excited, Karen.
Yes, he does. Your precious blood, he says. And he's making Jonathan very uncomfortable because
look at him.
I know. Well, one, he's not a looker, our Count, for one. And two, the way he's coming at him and saying your precious blood, Jonathan's backing up and the Count is basically stalking him. But then he kind of gets a hold of himself and says, let's chat together a moment, my friend.
Until dawn.
Yes, there are many hours until dawn. I have the whole day to sleep, he says. So he backs him up into a chair, basically.
Yeah, they sit by the fire.
Right.
Then I assume they talk, but we cut from that to the next morning.
Poor Jonathan slept in the chair.
Yeah. And he immediately pulls a mirror from his bag there, and he checks his neck.
Yeah, he can feel something.
It was hard to see in my version. Apparently, there are bite marks on his neck. From what
I couldn't see them.
But I couldn't see them either. But he does find breakfast has been provided for him, and he is very pleased.
Yeah, he's ravenous.
Oh, yeah, as you would be. I love breakfast, Karen. Don't you love breakfast?
Especially after being bitten. Probably has low blood sugar.
Indeed. So then Harker writes a letter to his wife, Nina.
Short letters, he writes.
Words to read. Nina, my beloved, don't be unhappy. Though I am far away, I love you. This is a strange country. Amazing, I think is what it said. It was hard to read. After my first night in this castle, I found 2 large bites on my neck. From mosquitoes? From spiders? I don't know. I have had some frightful dreams, but they are only dreams. You mustn't worry about me.
What a weird thing to write.
I know. It's like, I want you to worry about me, but don't worry about me.
Yeah, well, not the mountains are beautiful. The pub food was fantastic. You know, the Count is
Lots
weird.
of colorful people.
Yeah, the Count's really ugly and weird. Nope. I have 2 strange bites on my neck. I don't think I would put that in a letter to my beloved, but to each his own.
Harker flags down a man on a horse and has him apparently take the letter into town and mail it.
Which everybody avoids the castle, but for some reason, this dude's just going by on his horse. I mean, it's convenient.
Next, we cut to the Count and Harker. I believe they're going over business, looking
Yes,
at
they are.
papers. And the Count sees a picture of Nina and comments that she has a lovely throat, Karen.
Yes, she does.
And the Count agrees to buy the old mansion across I wrote across the street, but it's really across the fucking river from Harker, right?
Yeah, but they face each other. We shall be neighbors, he said.
Harker goes back to his room and he again finds the book about vampires in his bag. Apparently he stole it and forgot.
But first he kisses a picture of Nina.
And then he learns that the Nosferatus drink the blood of the young to stay young. And the mark of the vampire is the trace of his fangs on the victim's neck.
Is he starting to put this together?
No, I don't know.
We should say, too, Nosferatu is supposed to be the Romanian word for vampire.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure it actually translates directly, but that's where it came from. So they're not saying vampire. Even in the book, they're saying Nosferatu. It might be a Romanian
In the novel?
book.
The Bram
No, in the
Stoker
book
novel?
he's reading. It's a
Okay.
book on vampires, but
True.
everything still says Nosferatu
Right.
in it.
Clock strikes midnight. The Count enters Harker's room. Cut back to Bremen. Nina awakes. She goes to the terrace and walks along the ledge, I wrote.
She has filthy feet. Did you notice that?
She
I'm sure
collapses and they call a doctor.
Well, you didn't read the card.
I'm not going to read every card, Karen.
But it was a somnambulistic dream. It's sleepwalking. She's sleepwalking.
I figured it had something to do with symbolism. I don't know.
It's sleepwalking. During an episode of sleepwalking, the brain is partially awake, resulting in complex behaviors, and partially in REM sleep with no conscious awareness of actions. So 22.8% of sleepwalkers presented with nightly episodes. Every night, 43.5% presented with weekly episodes. And a lot of them are violent. Like they hurt the person sleeping next to them or whatever, and they don't remember. There was one participant, this was a study, obviously, that I took this from, had sustained multiple fractures and serious head trauma after jumping out a 3rd floor window. So you don't really know what's happening.
Have you ever sleepwalked, Karen?
Well, not that I know of, because I wouldn't know. I've never hurt anyone.
Woken up? You never woken up in the middle of your room?
No. Have you?
Yes.
Really?
And I remember as a child or a younger person getting up and walking out into the hall and dragging my blanket with me. And I remember that. But it's been a while, but I did leap out of bed and almost leap through the window of our bedroom.
Interesting.
Getting away from the ballistic, whatever it is, this big snake. I was being chased by a snake, Karen. I was running. I
wonder if that counts as sleepwalking because you were in the middle of a dream. But it says in the middle of
I jumped out of bed.
Yeah,
if I wasn't woken up, I would have gone out the window.
She's sleepwalking, basically. Or that's what the doctor says.
And then there's a shadow approaching Jonathan, and the Count descends upon him.
Yes. Excellent shadows in this movie.
Back in Bremen, cut back to Bremen again. Nina has an unknown illness. She senses that Jonathan was in danger. Next morning, Harker wakes up and explores the castle. He finds the Count sleeping in a casket with his eyes wide open.
There's a hole in the top of the casket that he looks through. It's not very effective.
It's creepy as hell.
It is creepy. There's no question. It was better that way, but still.
The Count's in there with his eyes wide open.
It is very creepy.
Then that night, Harker, out his window, sees the Count loading a bunch of coffins onto a carriage. And then finally, I wrote loading himself because it looks like him.
It is. I thought it was
elsewhere
him too.
where it was his servant, but it looks just like him.
I thought it was him also.
I did too. And he crawls in the coffin. The coffin lid flies up and closes, and the carriage rides away.
Yeah.
So then Harker tears up his bed sheets and makes a rope, and he descends out the window.
Yeah, I didn't really understand that either, but I think maybe
can't he go out just the fucking door?
I think his door was locked.
Okay, whatever.
That's what it has to be. And he's very high up. We see that he looks out very often, and it's going to be hard for him to escape.
Rapunzel.
Right. But we've seen that in many of the movies too, where they're locked in a room too high up to just scale down the wall. So he does the old.
Well, he just watched the Count leave in a coffin.
I know, you'd think you'd bust down the door, but
whatever.
And there's no servants. He hasn't seen any, but it's dramatic. He gets out the window.
So apparently some peasants find Harker and take him to a doctor. He has a high fever. He wakes and talks of coffins filled with earth. Cut to coffins being loaded onto a schooner, Karen. As they're loading them, they open one and find it is filled with dirt and rats. I think the captain is like checking the manifest or something. He wants.
Yeah, it does look like the paperwork is correct. But why did they open just one? They don't want a bunch of rats on their ship.
I don't know.
And is that for food? Is that why he's bringing them?
Don't know.
Or is it just to be scary?
I don't know. But then we cut to Van Helsing giving a class about carnivorous plants, Karen.
Now tell me you loved his jacket. Did you notice his jacket?
I did not, Karen.
It looked like it was like from the 70s. It had flowers all over it. It was like a smoking jacket, but long. It was impressive.
Van Helsing's?
Yeah, the professor. Okay. Yeah.
No,
all right. Notice. Anyway, so you're right. We're talking about carnivorous plants, right?
Yes.
I'm going to get, how many carnivorous plant species do you think there are?
Don't know. I've had 2 of the same species, though. I've had 2 Venus flytraps in my life.
We've probably talked about this before.
I think we have.
But they are plants that derive some or most of their nutrients from trapping and consuming animals or protozoans, typically insects and other arthropods.
I think we talked about it in Werewolf of London.
Yes, we did.
For some reason.
Carnivorous plants still generate some of their energy from photosynthesis. So there are 630 species around the world currently.
Does that mean there could be more in the future, Karen?
Well, we always can find more.
Like cryptozoological animals.
Well, or just parts of the earth that haven't been explored yet. There are isolated islands
Earth dog.
And things. Although most meat-eating plants consume insects, larger plants are capable of digesting reptiles and small mammals. So this is kind of interesting. How many carnivorous plants are there in the U.S.? Give it a guess.
In the wild?
Well, how many species? Not like how many. We're not going to go into everyone's house.
I had a Venus flytrap. I mean, is that native? I'm not sure. I doubt it. I don't think there's many in the United States. Native, right?
I don't know. I didn't look up. It just says how many carnivorous
I'd probably say
plants.
It's a very low number. I'm going to say 2.
Well, there are 66 species of carnivorous plants in the United States. But this is the interesting thing. 36 of them live in North Carolina. Isn't that's kind of weird, right?
As you do.
Well, no, I just thought.
Well, that's kind of the new world, right?
Half of them live in North Carolina.
That's where like the Roanoke is, right? Or is that, I don't know.
Whatever.
I thought that was Virginia.
Think so too.
Anyway, he's giving a lecture on carnivorous plants.
Yes, and he calls it the Venus flytrap specifically is what we're seeing. And he calls it the vampire of the vegetable kingdom.
And we do watch it eat a fly, which is one place where there is footage just stuck in there. Same with the hyena or whatever it was. You know, there's no actor interacting with it or anything. So you can see where there were certain things stuck in.
Next, we cut to Renfield, apparently in an asylum, and he's gone batshit crazy, Karen.
Yes, he has.
And he begins catching flies and eat them, much like your favorite actor, Dwight Fry, in the original Dracula, Universal Dracula.
And he's yelling, blood, blood. He looks like Ed Asner.
He does. Cut back to Van Helsing and his class, and then he discusses a polyp with claws, Karen.
Yeah, I don't know what that was.
Look like a protozoan or some shit. All right, next we see Nina sitting alone on the dunes.
Well, we
by
do
the
see
ocean.
Renfield watching a spider wrap a fly in a web, which could be another insert of film. But then, yes, Nina is off watching the water.
On the dunes, waiting for her husband, surrounded by crosses, apparently in a graveyard on the dunes.
And it's very windy. But there's a bench there she's sitting on.
And then Nina receives Jonathan's letter. He says he is leaving immediately to return to Bremen and to her.
And she clutches the letter to her chest and runs away.
Back in Transylvania, Jonathan is well enough now to travel and leaves the hospital where the peasants have taken him. Got back to Bremen. Renfield picks the pocket of a guard and reads the newspaper. Words to read. New plague baffles science is the headline. A mysterious epidemic of the plague has broken out in Eastern Europe and in the port cities of the Black Sea, attacking principally the young and the vigorous. Cause of the 2 bloody marks on the neck of each victim baffles the medical profession.
So we know that the Count is making his way down the coast, right?
Science is baffled.
Because at each port, there is the plague with the 2 marks. He seems quite ferocious in his eating because there's just the one.
I wrote, Renfield seems very pleased at this news.
Yes, he does.
Cut to the schooner, and the men are falling ill one by one, apparently.
We do cut back and forth. It looks like Jonathan's coming home on a horse.
Yes. He's bringing a horse with him. He's never riding it. He's walking through the woods.
Right. He's walking home, apparently. So we keep cutting from Jonathan with the horse to the ship.
Schooner on the seas. And on the schooner, all the men die, except for the captain and the first mate.
Yeah, they throw the last man of the crew overboard because he's not made it. He's dead.
First mate grabs a hatchet and he says, I'm going down to look in the hold. Goes down there and cuts a hole in one of the coffins, and rats come scurrying out. And then from another coffin, the lid opens and the Count rises, Karen.
Straight up from his feet. Like, how do you describe that?
I don't
in
know.
A 90-degree angle, comes straight up. His body is stiff as a board, and he's straight up from his feet.
It's the scene everyone knows.
Yeah, it's cool.
The man runs away and jumps overboard. So he gone. Go back to Harker, traveling through the forest.
Well, wait,
with his horse.
jumps. Wait, stop. So he jumps overboard, and then the captain ties the steering wheel to himself. What's he doing? Why is he?
From films I have seen in the past, that is what they do when they are going to sleep, to keep the wheel steady, stay on course.
Okay. So he knows he's going to die, so he's going to keep the ship on course?
Or he's going to take a nap. Whatever.
Oh, okay.
He's the only one left.
Right. So he
sometimes they will tie it to an object close so that the steering they stay on course. But
okay, that makes sense. I didn't know what that meant.
So cut to Harker traveling through the forest with his horse. Cut to Nina out on the terrace again. And I said, looks like she's praying to the moon. Lucy, I guess it's Lucy,
Not much for Lucy to do in this film, but whatever.
No. And less for her husband.
Yeah.
But yes.
Lucy checks on her and Nina says, "He's coming. I must meet him." And then Nina runs out, right, to the shore, right?
I think she runs and the carriage arrives, right?
Well, she runs out, but Jonathan doesn't arrive yet, but she runs out. And then we cut to Renfield watching as the schooner arrives in the harbor.
Yeah. Is this your first time listening to the Scary Spirits podcast? Or maybe you're a regular listener, but missed a few along the way. No worries. Not only can you find every episode on our website, scaryspirits.com, but you'll also get to enjoy awesome show notes too. I just want to say we really appreciate your support. Now let's get back to the show.
So then a guard comes in to give Renfield his food, and Renfield attacks him, and he escapes. Cut to the schooner, and the Count leaves the ship and carries a coffin through town.
Nobody says anything.
Nobody's anywhere. It's a deserted town.
It must be nighttime, I'm guessing. Must be. But he's very strong.
Because he's walking. So he's out in the...
He's walking, and he's got it like just one side.
Under his arm, yeah.
Just one.
Tucked under his arm.
Not like two arms, just one. And he's walking with his coffin, which I think is filled with dirt.
Yeah.
So he's very strong.
Dirt from his homeland. And back on the ship, we see rats escaping the cargo hold. Finally, Harker arrives home, and he and Nina embrace. They kiss as the Count creeps around outside, carrying his coffin to his new home.
Pretty funny.
Back at the schooner, townsfolk board and investigate.
Yeah, I think that must be the next morning.
Yeah.
So I think the Count left in the middle of the night. That's why no one's around. And in the morning, everybody's like, whoa, there's a boat here. Let's figure this out.
So they go on board. They find the ship's captain still tied to the wheel with bite marks on his neck. And he is the only one on board. They find the ship's log, and we have more words to read, Karen. 29th of April, 1838, carrying 5 passengers, mate, crew of 7, and myself, the captain. Then we see the doctors examining the captain's body, and they read the ship's log about the sickness. And there are rats in the hold, and they fear it is the plague. Doctors say the plague is here, and they all must stay in their houses, and they all run away.
They all just leave the body there and leave.
Run away and lock themselves in their houses.
They've all been there. They could have already been exposed, so they all disperse so they can spread it all over the place. I will say, before they all go on the ship, they do show the Count holding his casket, and he's in like a little canoe going across, still holding it under his arm. I just thought it was funny. But they're showing him get to his new home. But yes, they all think, oh shit, it's the plague. Because this man is dead and there's rats all over the ship. So they all just
have to stay inside. All businesses have to close. Can't go to the doctor and the dentist.
They should have stayed together, though, because they were already exposed. They all left to expose everybody else, if it was the plague.
Yes, knowing what we know now, Karen, that is what they should have done.
They should have known that.
But anyway... They make an announcement to the people of the city. A little drummer boy comes out and reads the announcement. He says, "Notice! To halt the spread of the plague, the burgomaster of Bremen forbids the citizens of the city to bring their sick to the hospitals until further notice."
So you're just stuck in the house.
Yeah, been there, done that, Karen.
They just all close the windows, and the little drummer boy drums away.
But I did make a note right here, Karen, that the drummer does not have very good grip technique.
No?
No, he does not. But anyway, cut to a man who I assume is the Undertaker or something. He's putting drawing crosses on the doors of the people who have died. Marking the houses.
I thought he was putting crosses on I would have thought crosses would have been to protect the people who hadn't died yet. But no, it's to mark.
It is not.
There were people who died in here.
Yes.
And so that's what the cross is.
Stay away.
Yep.
So then Nina finds the book about vampires and Jonathan's belongings, I assume. She reads, and we have words to read, Karen.
Listen, Nina had promised her husband never to open the book of vampires, but she found herself unable to resist the temptation. And she's doing a good job of acting like she's being tempted by the book. She can't hold back, and she starts to read. One can recognize the mark of the vampire by the trace of his fangs on the victim's throat. I don't know why Jonathan should have gotten rid of the book, but whatever.
I'm not sure he knew it was in there.
Only a woman can break his frightful spell, a woman pure in heart, who will offer her blood freely to Nosferatu and will keep the vampire by her side until the cock has crowed. So she has to keep him entertained until morning.
Till the cock crows.
Yes.
So then Nina watches as the coffins are carried down the street.
I thought that was a stunning shot.
It's a stark shot.
Yeah. They're in a single file, and there must be 6.
Yeah, not a lot, and they're spaced far enough apart, but they are.
But still, they're walking down the street. I thought it was
carrying a coffin. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was a striking shot.
And I think the black and white adds to that effect.
But it still seems like a lot of people. I mean, how long has he been there?
It's a plague.
It's not a plague. It's a vampire.
Okay.
It's the plague. He's the plague, and he's killing all these people. He's going to run out of people, at least young and vigorous ones.
So then we see the townsfolk talking about Renfield and how he escaped, and they begin chasing him through the streets, and they pelt him with rocks as he sits upon a rooftop. And we cut to Nina doing embroidery.
The people chasing Renfield, it's the whole fucking town. Women, children, men. So why are they chasing him? What? It's a mob mentality. It's weird. They must be bored.
Cut to Nina doing embroidery, and she is sewing Ich liebe dich.
Yes. I think she's made a decision at this point.
Cut back to the townsfolk chasing Renfield. And I wrote, does he trick them with a scarecrow? ?
I don't know. Something happened.
Okay, so that was in your version too. Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like a leprechaun, I said. And the crowd finds him, and do they kill him? I don't know what happened here, is what I wrote. I don't know what happened, but I think you're right. I think
it's a scarecrow kind of thing.
Dismantle a scarecrow.
Then we cut to the Count at the window beckoning to Nina. She opens her window, Karen. Count leaves his home. Nina collapses and tells Jonathan to go get the professor. Or I guess
which he takes forever to do. Well, Professor Van Helsing.
Then we see a shadow of the Count creeping up the stairs. This is another famous clip.
And it's very cool.
And the shadow of the Count, I wrote, grabs Nina's breast. Is that what he does?
Yes.
She's clutching her.
I think it's
clutching her heart, right?
Yes. So, really but it looks very sensual when the way his hand comes up her body, and it comes from below her breasts and goes up and then squeezes. But I think it's supposed to be squeezing her heart, but it's sexual in nature.
So then I think we see the Count drinking Nina's blood. It's kind of dark, and then the rooster crows, or the cock crows, as they say, Karen.
Harker ran off. He took forever to get the professor, but why is he not a vampire?
Harker?
Yeah.
I don't know.
He killed all the other people by drinking their blood, but not Harker.
I think we've talked about this before. Maybe he can control who he turns and who he doesn't. But
he doesn't seem to. Not with Harker. Anyway. But yes, the rooster crows in the morning.
Then we see Renfield back in his cell, and he's yelling to his master, beware! Sun begins to rise, Karen. Count goes to the window, and he goes up in a puff of smoke.
Yes.
A very small puff of smoke, I wrote.
Yes, I agree.
And we see Renfield tied up in his cell, and he says, my master is dead.
And he hangs his head.
He gone.
Renfield?
No. Count.
Oh, the Count's gone. Okay. But yes, Renfield just hangs his head in despair.
Then Nina wakes and calls for Jonathan. And he arrives, like he's right outside the door. Must have been out there all night. I don't know.
No, he was off getting the professor.
Well, did it take all night to get the
That's
professor?
What I'm saying. It took forever.
But they have enough time to embrace, and then she dies in his arms.
Yes.
And then we have words to read, Karen. And at that moment, as if by miracle, the sick no longer died, and the stifling shadow of the vampire vanished with the morning sun. And we cut and we see the Count's Transylvanian castle destroyed in ruins. The end.
Yeah, I didn't know. Did she die?
Yeah, she gone.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
All right, Karen, anything you pleasantly surprised by or really enjoyed in this film from 1922, which had no sound?
Well, the shadow work is amazing, but we kind of already knew that before we watched it. I think Max, what's his name?
Schreck
was amazing. He's not really in it a ton.
But I wrote, he appears to be very tall. How tall you think Max Schreck was?
6'2".
6'3".
Oh, it's close.
But he towers over Harker or Hutter, depending on which version you're watching.
He's impressive. I can see why it creeped people out. His hands especially were creepy with the extra long fingers, and
he had an extra joint.
So I thought that was creepy watching that. And especially in 1922, it's hard to watch these films, I think, looking back on it, because you've seen so many new special effects and everything. But I liked it. I thought it was a really good movie. I'm glad I saw it. It
was all right. It's a little herky-jerky, I thought.
Well, I think that's probably our recordings of it. Because if you look different places, they're different. It can be an hour and 40 minutes, an hour and 20 minutes. And, it's hard to say what we're missing.
It's not an hour and 40 minutes.
I think
we watched the longest one. Like I said, the initial United States release was 70 minutes. So I don't know what was cut and what wasn't. I don't know, but that's what the original United States release was.
Well, they added then.
Added from things they already shot, but I don't know what.
Oh.
It's hard to tell. Don't know.
I liked it. Is there anything you really liked about it?
It was fine. I did write there was a nice shot of Nosferatu walking along the deck of the schooner, like shooting up from the hold. I specifically wrote that was a nice shot, but there were some nice shadows and things like that. Yeah. Cinematography, I think, was probably the best part of it. Because, it's a silent film. You can't really talk about the dialogue or whatever, or the soundtrack or anything like that. It's all about cinematography.
Well, that's what I said. So next we say what we didn't like. And I would say what is distracting is the acting. But that's how you have to act in those films. Yeah. Like I said, it's very difficult to look back, knowing what we know now and seeing what we've seen and properly judge it. I think
everyone overacts. That's just the way you did it then, right?
Yes, but that's how you portrayed emotion in those films. So I thought it was excellent. I think I liked it more than you did. There were some funny things, like when he's walking through town with the casket and nobody's, no one's around and he's just carrying it. And he is it's different than...
He's not really walking though. He's like...
hovering, I think is, but I think it's different than
like a Benny Hill sketch or something.
The Dracula that we're used to is suave and debonair and can move in and out of society, which is scarier, I think, in some ways, because you'd be unaware of it. He is not a looker. I mean, he's freaky looking. So he looks like what you might think a vampire would look like in Romania or whatever. And then, so he can't move throughout society.
He's very mouse-like.
And Renfield...
with big ears and a hook nose and all that.
And the teeth, rat-like, I would say. But Renfield, we don't really see what his role is so much.
Or knock, depending on which version you watch.
Yes. So, I mean, I think they didn't really flesh out the characters very much.
We should say they are all the same. It's just the titles screens there or whatever that have the words just change the names of the characters, but the film was the same.
Yes.
I assume.
What did you not like about it?
What did I not like? I didn't make any notes about what I didn't like. It did seem in the middle there, kind of jumbled.
They did the thing where, again, I think it's more
when they were
difficult.
traveling,
Yes, when they jump around like that.
Cut, which
I think it's harder
I will talk about later. But
I think it's harder when you're trying to take notes to keep track of that. But when you're watching it, it's not so jarring if you're just sitting in the theater, because they were doing that in another film where it would have been more difficult. It's more difficult for us, but I don't think when you're watching it, it really affects you as much because you see it. They're showing you it's happening simultaneously. He's traveling by horse. The Count's arriving by ship. But the only way to show that is to cut.
And they do it all the time now, but just because we are trying to take notes, it might be more difficult for us.
Agreed.
Can't really think of anything else.
All right.
What kind of cocktail rating you want to give this film, Karen?
I'd give it a 2.
A 2? Wow. And remember, boys and girls, the lower the cocktail rating, the better the film.
I mean, if that's what we gave Phantom of the Opera, right?
Maybe.
I think it's as good as that. Actually, I looked it up. I looked up the top silent films.
This is supposedly the best silent film made.
Really? It's number 5 on my list.
Okay.
The General with Buster Keaton is number 1.
Oh, that's probably a comedy.
Yeah. Well, this might be the number 1 horror, certainly. I just think it would have been so creepy to people in 1922 because he could give you nightmares.
Yes.
The way he looks.
He is an effective character. I'll say that. All right. 2 cocktails. Would you like to hear some critics' reviews from the time, Karen?
Absolutely. You found some from 1922?
Believe it or not.
That's crazy.
We'll start with the New York Times from June 4th of 1929, actually. I think it was released in the States later. Nosferatu the Vampire, a film supposed to have been inspired by the blood-curdling Dracula, is not especially stirring. It is the sort of thing one could watch at midnight without its having much effect upon one's slumbering hours. In fact, yesterday at the Film Guild Cinema, where this production is now on view, there was at least one man who dozed audibly and another who was either terrified or was enjoying a 40 or more winks. I'm paraphrasing. The backgrounds are often quite effective, but most of it seems like cardboard puppets doing all they can to be horrible on papier-mâché settings. Shadows are employed to add to the horror of the chief figure who has extra joints stuck on the ends of his fingers. Max Schreck's movements as Nosferatu are too deliberate to be lifelike. Gustav Wangenheim does quite well as the good young man, Valdemar Hutter, or Jonathan Harker in our version, who has all sorts of more or less terrifying experiences to get money for himself and his beloved wife, Nina.
I didn't notice the sets, but the quality was so bad, it was hard to see them.
The sets, they changed because there were good sets and there were bad sets, though.
But you couldn't really...
They tried to duplicate the good sets, but they were bad the way they duplicated them, is what I would say.
Okay.
That was New York Times. My next one, Karen, Variety from December 25th, 1929. I didn't even know Variety was a magazine in 1929. But whatever.
Now you do.
I do. All right. Running time, 70 minutes in the United States, apparently. Skillfully mounted and directed, this symbolical, legendary cinema story of reanimated ghosts in a period set about a century or so ago, when vampirism was pretty well entrenched in the world's beliefs, is a depressive piece of art made even more incompatible for bourgeois theater fare because of misspotted and poor titling. Titling meaning the words in between scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Latter lends the film more than one confusing moment, and therefore it is a risky exhibit for the sure-seaters too, although the artistic quality of settings and direction command consideration. Action details the forages of a nobleman who is dead yet alive, making nighttime raids on human beings and compelling them to become subservient to him by sucking the blood from their necks, often plaguing them to death. His especial delight is a pretty woman. The director's a master of artisan, demonstrating not only a knowledge of the subtler side of directing, but in photography. One shot of the sun cracking at dawn is an eye filler, among others of extremely imaginative beauty, is one which takes in a schooner sailing in a rippled stream photographed in such a manner that it has the illusion of color and an enigmatic weirdness that's more perplexing than the ghost action of the players. His funeral scene in the deserted town street where the bodies of the plague victims are carried in coffins held aloft by straggling pallbearers is unusual to say the least. Empty, shattering buildings photographed to suggest the desperate desolation brought on by the vampire is extremely effective symbolism.
Yeah.
Max Schreck as the vampire is an able pantomimist and works clock-like, his makeup suggesting everything that's goose pimply. He did his worst on every occasion, which was good.
I wonder how difficult it would have been. We know the story so well. We know. We know that Jonathan and Mina, but I wonder if not knowing it would have made the movie much more difficult to watch and understand.
My last critique here is from Roger Ebert, which of course is not from the time, but it is from 1997. He writes, and I paraphrase, "To watch Nosferatu is to see the vampire movie before it had really seen itself. Here is the story of Dracula before it was buried alive in cliches, jokes, TV skits, cartoons, and more than 30 other films. The film is in awe of its material. It seems to really believe in vampires. Max Schreck, who plays the vampire, avoids most of the theatrical touches that would distract from all the later performances, from Bela Lugosi to Christopher Lee to Frank Angela to Gary Oldman. The vampire should come across not like a flamboyant actor, but like a man suffering from a dread curse. Schreck plays the Count more like an animal than a human being. Two of the key sequences in the film are montages in which simultaneous events are intercut. That's a routine technique today, but Murnau or whatever, who was the director, is credited with helping to introduce the montage. And here we see Orlok advancing on Hutter, while in Bremen, his wife Ellen sleepwalks and cries out a warning that causes the vampire to turn away. The shots on the ship are the ones everyone remembers. The cargo is a stack of coffins all filled with earth. A brave mate goes down with a hatchet to open a coffin and rats tumble out. Then Count Orlok rises straight up, stiff and eerie, from one of the coffins in a shot that was as frightening and famous in its time as the rotating head in The Exorcist. Ellen Hutter learns that the only way to stop a vampire is for a good woman to distract him so that he stays out past the first cock's crow. Her sacrifice not only saves the city, but also reminds us of the buried sexuality in the Dracula story. Bram Stoker wrote with ironclad 19th century Victorian values, inspiring no end of analysis from readers who wonder if the buried message of Dracula might be that unlicensed sex is dangerous to society. The Victorians feared venereal disease and the way we fear AIDS. The vampirism may be a metaphor. The predator vampire lives without a mate, stalking his victims or seducing them with promises of bliss, like a rapist or a pickup artist. The cure for vampirism is obviously not a stake through the heart, but nuclear families and
bourgeois values. Is Nosferatu scary in the modern sense? Not to me. I admire it more for its artistry and ideas, its atmosphere and images, than for its ability to manipulate my emotions like a skillful modern horror films. It knows none of the later tricks of the trade, like sudden threats that pop in from the side of the screen. But Nosferatu remains effective. It doesn't scare us, but it haunts us. It shows not that vampires can jump out of the shadows, but the evil can grow there, nourished on death. The film is all about the things we worry about at 3 a.m. Cancer, war, disease, madness. It suggests these dark fears in the very style of its visuals. Much of the film is shot in shadow. The corners of the screen are used more than is ordinary. Characters lurk or cower there, and it's a rule of composition that tension is created when the subject of a shot is removed from the center of the frame. Nosferatu is more effective for being silent. It is commonplace to say that silent films are more dreamlike, but what does that mean? In Nosferatu, it means that the characters are confronted with alarming images and denied the freedom to talk them away. There is no repartee in nightmares. Human speech dissipates the shadows and makes a room seem normal. Those things that live only at night do not need to talk, for their victims are asleep, waiting.
Okay. That's pretty good.
I thought so.
Yeah.
A little long. It was even longer. Like I said, I paraphrased. Did you read the essay about Nosferatu in the Robin Wood book?
I
Karen?
did not. That was been a good idea.
Suggested by Dr. Craig.
You did, I guess.
I did.
So tell us, what's the name of the book?
It is called Robin Wood on the Horror Film, Collected Essays and Reviews. There's a whole essay, it's only like 3 pages, about Nosferatu in here. He writes, it is the most intelligent adaptation of Bram Stoker's novel, its nearest, not very close rival being John Badheim's 1978 version with Frank Langella. You ever seen that version?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I've always just assumed it was bad, but it might not be, according to what he says here. But he goes on to talk about Nosferatu. And I only highlighted one sentence in here, more or less, which as I was reading it, I was like, damn, I didn't even catch that. So here he writes, he's talking about, Jonathan and Nosferatu making their way to Bremen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he says, Jonathan, who traveled by land, is returning by land. The vampire, having taken over a ship, is coming by sea. Nina sits by the shore, gazing out to sea, awaiting her husband. Her exclamation as she awakens from sleepwalking, he is coming, I must go meet him, follows a shot, not of Jonathan, but of Dracula's ship.
Ah.
So she's going to the sea waiting for her husband when Dracula is traveling by sea and her actual husband is traveling by land.
Interesting.
At
some point, I'm going to have to read this book. The actual Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Hey, Karen, what do you think of our cocktail?
I like this cocktail. I would say pull back on the lemon juice slightly, but not a lot. I like the way it mixes.
Mine has evaporated once again, Karen. Oh, I got the cherry. It's fine. It's
sweet.
The lemon was fine. I thought it was going to be more than I wanted, but it wasn't.
The simple syrup sweetens it up. Because pomegranate juice, I don't think is very sweet, but there's not a ton in there, so it's hard to tell. I like it. I think it's a looker.
Okay.
I would look very sophisticated drinking it at a Halloween party.
Or at the pool in the lanai.
No, that's true.
It's it's more of a Halloween drink, though, I would say.
I think.
It does taste tropical, but it looks more Halloween-y. All right, Karen, anything we learned today?
We learned about the Carpathian Mountains. We learned about, which I think we already knew, some of it, the carnivorous plants. Man, you North Carolinians, watch out. Whew. About putting X's on the doors of the dead. You told us a lot about the film. It's a top
Sleepwalking.
5.
You talked about
Sleepwalking. Yeah.
And that Shrek means terror or fright, maybe.
That's what I found, but I don't know if it's true.
And Bremen. I didn't know where Bremen was. So a little.
But you can see it's interesting to watch this as one of the first films. I don't think it's the first one, but you can see what has been repeated over and over and over. Like you said, the carriage won't go up to the castle. How many films have we seen where that happens?
So the Variety review, I paraphrased. Parts that I didn't read was that the novel, well, this review was written in 1929, right? And it says the novel was authored, it says more than 20 years ago. So it was around the turn of the century, I assume, right? The Dracula novel came out. And there was a play that was on Broadway like shortly after that. Because it apparently 1927 was the play. And they're comparing.
Isn't that where Bela Lugosi was in
Yes.
the play before the movie?
Yeah.
But I'm saying that there's a lot of tropes in this movie that obviously aren't tropes until much later when everybody else uses them. The sunlight. I don't think sunlight was a thing before this movie to kill the vampire.
Well, it's probably in the novel then, right?
Might be. But the sunlight, the pretty girl, the carriage that won't go up to the castle, the pub scene where the people all recoil, all of that is
It's all based on the original novel.
But we see it. That's what they pulled. The novel's thick. You have to pull what you want to be important out of the novel. Yes, it's in the novel, but everything in the novel is not in the movie.
Correct.
So they're picking certain things that then stay in that genre forever. But some things
every
don't.
Every film afterwards feels like they have to include that important.
Except that, the vampire goes from a rat-looking person to a handsome person. That moves. He becomes more romantic, more sexual, although I was surprised at the ending. I'm sure back in 1922, it was bordering on scandalous.
Well, it was pre-code, and I was hoping for a flimsier nightgown, Karen, but
yeah, they did not have flim. No,
they wore like white flannels.
Yes, they did.
No see-through, through the light or anything like that.
Nope, none of those tropes.
Okay. Are we ready to talk about the next film, Karen?
I think we are.
And whose would that be?
It's your choice, Greg. What did you choose?
That would be mine.
Too bad it's not the 1978 whatever.
I know. Now I want to. I'm putting it on my list, though. So the film I have chosen, Karen, for next week is The Lords of Salem.
The Lords of Salem.
Yes.
And why did you choose that movie?
I'm glad you asked, Karen.
I always do.
Our next episode goes live on April 19th, and The Lords of Salem was released on April 19th. And way, way back in 2013. This is probably one of the newest ones we've done.
Wow.
2013, a Rob Zombie film, The Lords of Salem.
Do you have a drink to go with it?
I do. It's been on my list. Watch this for a while. I'm looking for an excuse. So the drink
and here I am.
And here you are.
Your excuse.
God bless you, Karen. The cocktail I have chosen, Karen, is called the Hocus Pocus Salem cocktail. We ain't ever going to do Hocus Pocus, I don't think.
I don't think so.
But
I don't think you would do that.
I've never seen it, but I assume it takes place in Salem. So
it does.
So we're going to need vodka, Midori melon liqueur or a melon liqueur, blue curacao, orange juice, lemon lime soda or Sprite, and silver cake shimmer dust.
Wait, have we not had this one before?
I know, it sounds familiar, right? We haven't. It sounds very familiar, though, to me.
Because we have the cake.
I know we have it. I don't know what we used it for, but nothing called the Hocus Pocus Salem cocktail.
It's very similar to something else, but that's okay.
Except maybe the Midori. That might have been different.
Yeah, that's
It
possible.
might have been a drink we've already had, but you just add Midori.
And bam, you have a Salem
You got a
cocktail.
whole new cocktail.
Have you seen this movie before?
I have not.
I wonder what it's about.
Like I said, it's been on my watch list for a while. Quite a while.
Can't wait.
I can tell.
Well, I just picture a lot of corpses when it's Rob Zombie. I could be wrong.
Don't know. Yeah. All right. Anyone you need to thank this week, Karen?
Well, I have to thank our listener. There's a lot of podcasts.
Our friends and listeners.
There's a lot of podcasts out there. Thank you for spending time with us. What about you, Greg? Who do you need to thank?
Once again, Karen, I need to thank the band Verse 13 for providing all the music in the Scary Spirits podcast.
The music definitely makes the podcast better.
Anything else, Karen?
Please drink responsibly.
Yes.
Hey, it's Karen, and I'm here to talk to you about getting social with us. Did you know you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Scary Spirits Podcast? Or check out our website, scaryspirits.com. If you have something to say, email us at info@scaryspirits.com. And as always, thanks so much for listening. Please drink responsibly.